Thank you. I do have the pleasure of having a chat with Director of the Illinois Department of Economic and the DCEO, I'm sorry, I totally tripped over myself, and I used to work for the same agency, the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. But I do want to have a chance to point out her DCEO colleagues that are in the room. These are a fabulous group of people who can help you. So we've got Jennifer Givens up front. We've got Chad Phillips, we've got Jamie Gladfelter. If you are interested as a small business in any of the resources that we're about to talk about, please do talk to them. Or if you're interested in learning more about the state of Illinois, as was already mentioned, the Illinois Innovation Vouchers, the Illinois Science and Tech Coalition is out in the lobby. They have a table, so if you want to get to know more about that, or the Illinois Fast Center for SBIR matching, we can talk to you as well. So we do hope you'll become part of our state and learn more about the wonderful programs that we're about to discuss. So get to know the team. Thanks. Hopefully this works. So I'll try not to botch DCEO again as a poor start, Kristin.
It's an alphabet soup.
So I do have the pleasure of having the director here today, and she is a seasoned person in government. She's known for working on complicated issues. She's had 2 decades of service. She's worked as chief of staff of 2 presidents in the Illinois Senate. She worked as the director of IDES, and she has worked on numerous legislative issues to get policy implemented. And so we're going to hear more about that, but today I want her to talk about one of the things that she did recently, which is to implement a plan for the state of Illinois. So they've already gotten a lot done at DCEO, and I'm sure she will give you highlights of all the accomplishments, but they set out with the help of the University of Illinois and other partners across the state and EDOs to think about what is a roadmap for our future. And that's called the Open for Business Economic Growth Plan for Illinois. And best of all, it has a checklist because this woman gets things done. And she wants to hold everybody accountable and make sure that we're doing the best job we can in the state of Illinois. So before I dive into the topics, Kristin, tell us a little bit more about yourself and why you wanted to create this plan.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you for introducing the team that I have the joy of working with every day at DCEO. I have to tell you, too, just thank you for the invitation to be here today. We wouldn't be anywhere else in the state of Illinois. It's that important to us that we're here, and it's been just a real pleasure to see some friendly faces in the room. I started my career in public service, as you said, about 23 years ago. I've worked on lots of policy on fiscal initiatives for the state, and when I arrived at DCEO in January of 2023, we were at the precipice of beginning to plan for our 5-year plan. So we were planning for a plan. State statute, the state law requires the department to publish an economic development strategy for the state every 5 years. But we wanted to take a very collaborative approach to putting together the plan that we published in August of 2024 that will guide our roadmap through 2029. We did that, Laura is quite right. We did that in partnership with hundreds of economic development, higher education, and business partners across the state. It was important to me, it was important to Governor Pritzker that we really embarked upon a listening tour, quite frankly, that through the course of a year allowed us to generate the data and feedback that we needed to inform what we're going to do over the next 5 years as we prioritize and really get, I think, a little more intentional about how we're informing the public policy choices we're making to invest in economic development strategies.
Great. And importantly, if you open that plan, you are going to see that they chose sectors where the state of Illinois thinks they have a chance to win. And many of those are, of course, fitting for our state's economy. And one that, of course, we want to talk about today is that next generation agriculture, AgTech, and food processing as core areas for the state's growth and economic future were picked. And that fits into what we heard today about the IFAB Tech Hub with bioprocessing. It means companies like John Deere that we just heard about, one of the largest equipment manufacturers in the state, can be part of that future. It means our farmers in the room are part of our future and strength and growth. Tell us more about why you think AgTech is so important, and it makes sense in this room today as you hear about new technologies.
Yeah, it's quite right. AgTech is one of the key 6 priority sectors for the state. Look, taking a step back a little bit, I grew up in Southern Illinois. I have a residence in Chicago. I spend most of my time along Interstate 57 and 55. I don't think, for those of you not from Illinois, I don't think you would have to venture too far outside of your household to encounter someone that in one way or another is proximal to the agricultural industry, even if they don't necessarily realize it. They happen to work for a food manufacturing company and they aren't putting the pieces together about sort of why Illinois is where that activity is happening. Illinois is the #1 food manufacturing and production state in the country. We're the sweets and treats capital of the world, as the governor likes to say. Over a 2-year period, beginning in 2019, we saw an over 500% increase in AgTech related investments happening here in Illinois. So there's been a lot of activity happening in this space. Illinois, of course, is 70% farmland. And again, it really is very much part of our DNA. We have a workforce. I know that we're going to get into that a little bit later in our conversation, but we have a workforce that's trained and familiar with ag and ag-related sectors. So there was no question that it wasn't going to be a priority sector for us. Our challenge at the department, and we're going to do this, of course, in concert with you, Laura, and your partners at the university and our partners in economic development, is to now articulate the policy steps, the policy choices that we're making to make sure that we're supporting this industry.
Awesome. It is a great state for all the things that she just described, and we are winning more business. So I wanted to talk about the role of business attraction a little bit as well. So there were many things laid out in this plan, and some of these have been implemented. So everything from creating the right sites. When we talk about precision agriculture and in particular fermentation, there's a lot of things that need to be there. We're going to need broadband and other things that were already talked about today. If we're going to create scaled bioprocessing, we need power, we need water, lots of things that makes those sites and rail possible. So that's been worked on. We need the type of manufacturing skills that are required, and then the complementary, everything from our K through 12 schools up through PhDs that are working in these businesses, and so I hope you'll highlight that. But we also need to do so in a regional approach, and I also wanted to point out, I don't know if I still see her in the room, Allie Grady here from Team Red. So regional help. A lot of these things need to understand your community and understand its strengths, and they've put a heavy emphasis on that here at DCEO. So I'll point out a few wins. Feel free to talk about any ones that are your favorites. I'm going to focus on Central Illinois because that's where we are today, and food and ag. So some of the wins have been the rebirth of Primient in Decatur, so a big investment happening there so companies can scale their technology. It was really exciting. Last year we hosted InnovaFeed in Decatur, which is turning insects into proteins, and it's this big French company that has a massive investment in our community. We have Incabrasa in Gilman. Speaking of driving up I-57, if you see at Gilman those big plants and steam coming off, they're turning soybeans into new goods, and they've recently expanded. If you like chocolate, sweets and treats, Ferraro in Bloomington, Illinois is a chocolate manufacturer. And just this week, I'm going to put Tom on the spot here, we were pleased to have a big announcement happening of Rainbow Ag, a global provider of crop protection services, that they're going to purchase 30 acres of an industrial site in Champaign and make a large opportunity to work with different distribution partners for their goods as well. And here in the research park, speaking of sweets and treats, I already mentioned, so I'll say Michelle, Mondelez, an Illinois corporation, expanding and doing a grand opening. So these are some of my favorites. Tell us more about business attraction tools and why you think Illinois got chosen for these types of expansions.
I mean, Illinois is on the rise, you know, and I say that too with the context that Illinois' overall economy is among the most diverse in the country. Which lends itself to having these really robust supply chains and an ecosystem that can really rely on one another to make projects like this happen. For the 3rd consecutive year, Illinois has been named the #2 state in the country for corporate expansions and relocations, and something that we're very excited about. We're the #1 state in the Midwest for new business starts. And there are lots of reasons why all this activity is happening, not the least of which is because we have 20% of the world's freshwater here in Illinois. We're truly in the middle of everything. All 6 Class 1 railroads converge in the state of Illinois. We can move your goods to market quicker than you can find in other states. And again, we've been leveraging tools in our DCEO toolbox to make a lot of this happen. Laura, some of the projects that you mentioned, like Primient and Incabrasa and InnovaFeed, were projects that were incentivized, and Ferraro were incentivized by DCEO programs. Those are investments that we're very deeply committed to and partnerships that we're proud to be a part of. You know, you mentioned sites at the top of this question. We recently announced our FY26 budget. We're in the middle of our budget making process right now in Springfield. And that includes a $500 million commitment to make sites ready for industrial development. And that's piggybacking off of $80 million in site readiness funds that my department has released over the course of the last 2 fiscal years. So really, I think operating smartly, helping companies navigate access to all of our business attraction tools within the agency, at a local level with our economic development partners, leveraging our $45 billion Rebuild Illinois Capital program to put money into sites and industrial development. It's like sort of this stacked approach, I think, that's really helping us see these big wins that are resulting in these superlatives that I'm able to go out around the state and repeat. Again, these like #2 in the country for expansions and relocations. I don't think the average Illinois understands necessarily just how prominent we've been from an attraction standpoint, but Illinois is really, really in play for big projects. It's exciting to be a part of.
And we're happy to have a governor who's a good chief marketing officer of our state, who can sell our state and all the assets we have. Part of that is an excellent workforce. So workforce really matters. We're here at the University of Illinois. We have 59,000 students, as the Chancellor reminded us all of. It is a huge place that is educating the future. We have really talented students who do things like we just heard in the hackathon, who can build things and can have real-world engagement. But employers need a whole range of skills. And one of the really great partnerships that we've had in our community is working with Parkland College. Community colleges play a pivotal role in working with industry, and AGCO is one of their big partners. And in this last year, they were able to open a new program, which is the AGCO Service Technician Associate Degree Program. And that has a 2-year track where they are able to meet the needs for AGCO's Fendt, Massey, Ferguson brands of equipment and have repairs, because these machines have gotten increasingly sophisticated, and if you want to keep them running, you have to have a lot of tech skills. So I mentioned that one. It's not the same as the manufacturing training academies you're going to tell us about, like at Rivian and other places where they're partnering, but it's really important, I think, for industry to have collaboration, as we heard this morning, with our higher ed partners to create the skills they need.
Yeah, without question. Laura, I'm glad you mentioned that partnership at Parkland, because it's just one of many examples that we're seeing replicated across our community college system. Our community college or technical college system, for those of you that are more familiar with that term in other states, is the 3rd largest in the country. It is a network of schools that can provide technical trainings, bespoke certification programs for your workforce. We work with them all of the time at DCEO. We actually, as part of our attraction toolkit, have been providing fast-track grants, so workforce readiness grants to companies to help train and upskill their workforce. We've also, in our FY26 budget proposal, to double down on our commitment to IFAB, which I know everyone's heard a lot about today. We've included funding to make sure that Parkland and Richland community colleges, which are so important to the IFAB partnership, have the resources they need to purchase the equipment to train people in bioprocessing. So the state we're continually sort of reaching out to people, trying to ideate on how can we come in and make an investment that's going to plus up what you're trying to do right now to support your workforce. We have funded manufacturing and training academies in the electric vehicle space. We've been doing some MTA work in advanced manufacturing at community colleges across the state. We also included in our budget proposal that's currently pending before the General Assembly, the governor introduced additional funding for future manufacturing and training academies across the state. So the idea is to do all these things in a manner that's consistent with our 5-year economic growth plan, which would mean supporting, of course, bioprocessing and AgTech.
You heard it here, ladies. So we're excited for that future to hopefully get through the legislature. And I did want to say Richland Community College has a really nice and long continued partnership with Richland and Decatur. They've already been working on a technician program for bioprocessing. And so growing that and its potential to meet the demands of this industry is one of the things that we can uniquely do, I think, as partnerships in this region. You also talked about new business starts, and many of those are small businesses. And I pointed out your small business team is here too. There are really great new resources. Having worked with Enterprise Works, our incubator, which has been in the research park for 20 years, we've had 400 companies. We have never had a better toolkit to start looking at how do we help these companies grow in the state. A lot of our companies rely on SBIR funding. There's an SBIR match, and there's even a pending better match if our legislature does all the things that we hope. And we have programs like the Illinois Innovation Vouchers, where small businesses are going to IBRL and other partners for field trials and able to get 75% of that funded. There's Edge for Startups that I hope you tell more about of what that is. And there's Invent Illinois, so direct investments into companies. There are numerous other programs. Feel free to highlight some of them that you think are most appropriate, but there are ways if a small business that you can get resources here in Illinois that we have not had before, and I think we should highlight some.
Yeah, I think, my boss, Governor Pritzker, understands what it takes to start a company, and has been very forward with the folks that are working on budget and economic development issues in his administration. Go out there and develop tools that can help emerging early stage companies do the thing. And that's what we're trying to do. I'm also you introduced some of these people at the top of our time together, Laura, but I'm really fortunate to work with super talented folks that have also they've founded companies. You guys have navigated the SBI or SCTR worlds on your own, and you can provide that navigational support to companies too, which I think is really important. Innovation vouchers you mentioned, we are seeking additional funding for that in the upcoming budget. I have confidence that given all of the successes that are coming out of the innovation voucher program that we've been running in concert with the ISTC, that we're going to be successful. Edge for Startups is another program that you mentioned that really came out of our continued effort to work with policy makers, lawmakers in Springfield to change and improve upon the statutory, sort of those programs that are available and accessible to us as a matter of state law, in order to make sure that they are responsive to pre-revenue stage companies. And Edge for Startups is one of those tools. Allie Grady is here, and she can answer questions from any of the companies in the room that are interested in learning more. And I guess more broadly, I would say this. DCEO and the Pritzker administration have been very successful going back to Springfield for now 7 consecutive convenings of the Illinois General Assembly. This is no small thing, guys. I worked in the state legislature for a very long time, and I know what it takes to try and get this stuff passed through the state legislature. But we've been very successful in going back year after year and making the case for improvements to our economic development toolbox. And those improvements are coming directly out of conversations that we're having with industry. We're going to keep doing that. We're going to ask for another set of statutory changes this spring while the legislature is in session. But that has enabled us to create programs like the ones that you just mentioned.
And we also need places that house these companies. And we've been fortunate. I'll say Enterprise Works, as I'd mentioned, funded by the state 20 years ago. It's had a lot of startup companies. We also built out LabWorks in this last year with the support of DCEO's Wet Labs program. If you are an Enterprise Works former or current company or have ever worked at the incubator, maybe you can raise your hand. I know we have a lot of our startups in the room. Okay, they're being shy, some of them, but I see a whole bunch of your faces across the room. So it's been a really special place to us, and we're grateful for the state supporting that. I also have the pleasure of being the Chief Operating Officer of the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park in Chicago. Preeti is here from our team. You're going to hear about quantum today. So building out places that do special things, and I think that's a lot because we have a governor who loves deep tech and loves technology, helped to create incubators in the state and venture-backed. So maybe if you could say a little bit about what you think are some of the places that are conducive to startup activity.
Well, just to, again, carry on the IFAB theme for just a second, the budget that we're hoping to move through Springfield does include funding the expansion at the IBRL. So we're really quite dedicated to that project. Thanks. Illinois, let me put it to you this way. I think the breadth of experience across the higher ed ecosystem, the economic development ecosystem, we're always looking for new places and people where we can come in and make that investment of public dollar to support the work that they're doing. We did that, of course, with Enterprise Works 20 years ago. We hope to do more of that in the future. You saw in our 5-year economic growth strategy a commitment to continue funding lab spaces. We know that there is just a need for them on university campuses, and also co-located in other community spaces where people are just trying to invent and figure out new things, and we might be able to use public resources to help support that type of activity.
Awesome. You're also helping communities. So you said about driving through I-57 or I-55, a lot of traversing different farmland, and you pass a lot of small communities as well as the big cities in our state. Community building is something DCEO does well, and it could be anything from rural economic development through broadband or tourism. How do you make places special in Illinois?
Yeah, and it is really part of the business attraction pitch too, right? Because we know that people want to live in vibrant, healthy communities, and DCEO, I'm really proud to say that DCEO, I think, is part of supporting that. We're a pretty small agency. We have about 400 people currently located across the state of Illinois, but we do all of this work across 30 different divisions. So we run things like the Illinois Office of Film, where we provided capital resources to repurpose an old air hangar at the Rantoul Airport, which is just north of here, off of I-57, to turn that into a soundstage. And there's a burgeoning film industry here in the East Central region of the state of Illinois. We do that through initiatives like our Illinois Grocery Initiative, where we are putting $20 million in public resources into funding grocery stores in communities that are otherwise confronting food scarcity. Again, wanting to make sure that all Illinoisans have access to healthy, fresh food, because we know that that's everything for quality of life, right? We have done recently another round of redeveloped downtown and Main Street programs to support small and medium-sized communities across the state. So constantly trying to find ways to make sure that, we're not only making these investments at universities and in the large urban centers of the state, but that we're also doing them in small communities that like Gilman, happen to be home to some of our most important employers.
As somebody who came from Belleville, Illinois, it takes a whole state, and there are many differences from Southern Illinois through Chicago, but we do have resources, as you described, because of this combination of small, mid, and large-sized cities working together. And we have amazing infrastructure that connects them. So a lot of rail traffic, a lot of interstate traffic, and of course O'Hare. You speak a little bit about the transportation network that exists in Illinois.
I mean, it's really unparalleled. As I mentioned earlier, all six Class 1 railroads converge here in Illinois. You won't find that in any other state. From O'Hare Airport, you can fly to any market in North America. The the rivers and barge networks, of course, are unparalleled. So, I would encourage any company that's thinking about an expansion or location opportunity to sit down with our team, give us the opportunity to pitch you, but also give us the opportunity to model for you why Illinois makes sense for your business. We do this closely with our partners at Intersect Illinois. They're also in the room. Hey, guys. There are business attraction partners, our public-private partners at DCEO. We do this closely with our economic development partners, including those from Macon and Champaign counties who I know are in the room. And, just give us the opportunity to talk to you, because I think why Illinois, to me, is the best place to live and work and do businesses for lots and lots and lots of reasons. But we can definitely help make the case for you as to why Illinois is the only choice.
Awesome. Well, we heard a lot about what's going on at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, but you did talk about movies. So I feel like I should end with a fun question, which is a favorite movie filmed in the state of Illinois.
Oh, well, can I go TV show? Because everyone loves
sure,
The Bear.
TV show.
Everyone loves The Bear. Although I will say this too, because I know that we have some quantum people in the room. I love Dark Matter. So I don't know if any of you watch Dark Matter on Apple TV, but they're currently filming their second season in Chicago.
Is it going to be at the former U.S. Steel site?
No comment, Laura. You might know better than I, Laura.
Okay, well, watch The Bear if you have not. Made in Chicago, and great food, which ties us into our ag and food discussions today. Thank you very much, Director Richards, and thank you to the DCEO team for being here today.
Anytime.